Discover the incredible, life-changing truth revealed in K-19’s final 3 hours of hidden courage. The storm crashed over Maplewood like an angry beast unleashed, winds howling as if the very sky was mourning. Frank Thompson sat in his garage, hands greasy and eyes heavy. That day started like any other, but the day was turning treacherous, and yet, his spirit remained indomitable. He poured his heart into the worn cars that spoke of stories left behind, each repair a small victory tethered to dreams he had reluctantly set aside. The allure of opening his shop floated in his mind, but family always came first. He would sacrifice any aspiration to keep his wife and kids secure. Outside, dark clouds twisted and churned, reflecting the town's brewing unrest. Maplewood, once a picture of harmony, seemed caught in a storm of growing discontent. The recent economic downturn rattled nerves, igniting old resentments among the townspeople. They pointed fingers, quarrels sparked like dry timber catching fire. Joy turned to despair, the community fracturing. In the midst of chaos, hope wilted like a summer flower under a harsh frost. Then, just like thunder cracking the silence, Jake stepped into town. Frank's estranged younger brother. Memories of laughter turned to bitterness struck a chord deep within him. For years, the brothers had been distant, wrapped in the weight of unspoken words and misaligned dreams. Whatever grand plans they had once envisioned, the realities of life had swept them aside like debris in the wind. As their eyes locked, the air thickened with tension. With Jake's sudden return, old grievances roared back to life. Years spent in stubborn silence now lay bare, waiting for the spark that would either mend or rend them utterly apart. They talked, exchanged heated words, accusations flickering like flames. Sacrifice means something, Frank. You're too caught up in this town's problems. Jake's voice cracked, as memories flashed of failed dreams weighing them down. You think I don't know sacrifice? I've given everything for this family. Frank spat back, a mix of pain and pride jolting through him. His heart raced, wanting to reach out, but fearing the touch would just lead to more wounds. Before they could further unravel each other, news swept through town. A corporation was ready to swoop in, dangling money like a lifeline but armed with dangerous strings that would bind Maplewood in chains. Frank's chest tightened. He felt it, the desperate glances of neighbors losing hope, children who once proudly played in the streets now shadowed in gloom. Fire ignited within him. Listen up, he bellowed, rallying the townsfolk, channeling the storm's fury into passionate resolve. We won't let them pillage what's left of our home. Each word drummed against their doubts, as if thrumming against the very heart of Maplewood. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The whispers of doubt faded, replaced by the unyielding spirit of community. A fire rekindled. With Jake at his side, bearing witness to his unbending will, Frank began to see a path, a bridge between their rifts forged by unity. Yet, the fear lingered. What if this fragile alliance broke again? What would happen to his children if everything collapsed? In the gusty winds of Maplewood's turmoil, old wounds and new struggles collided. Hope flickered dimly against the backdrop of uncertainty, leaving Frank and Jake battling not just for their town, but for a bond stretched across fractured memories, daring to reclaim legacies and futures worth fighting for. The night lingered over Maplewood, heavy with tension and expectation. Frank paced outside the garage, watching as the shadows of the town seemed to creep closer, whispering fear into the hearts of its citizens. He could feel it in his bones, a resolve mixing with desperation, a community desperate for change, for something to cling to as the storm outside raged on. Frank, Jake's voice broke the stillness, pulling his attention away from the ominous clouds. His brother stood with his hands shoved deep into his pockets, the resistance he had built against coming back home now crumbling. "We've got to talk strategies. This corporation won't wait for us to organize. Frank turned to face Jake, surprised to see concern etched on his brother's face. You actually want to help? The words came out harsher than intended, but the weight of old grudges still hung heavy between them. Of course I do. Jake snapped back, irritation flaring. I may have made mistakes, but I can't sit back while people I care about lose their homes. We need to bring everyone together, to show them we're not afraid. His eyes glinted, a spark igniting the brotherly bond that had long been strained. All right, Frank replied, the tension softening slightly. Let us rally the townsfolk. We'll meet at the old high school auditorium. We need a plan, a real one. Somehow, his heart beat a little lighter. Perhaps they could mend something that was broken, not just for the town's sake, but for their own.as. The brothers spent the night devising their plan. The wind howled outside, drowning out all doubt. They crafted speeches, outlined ideas, and discussed the strengths each resident could bring to the table. With every exchanged thought, the distance between them shrank, replaced by echoes of laughter and shared memories. The day they built their first treehouse, picnics by the river, and summer nights catching fireflies. Dawn rolled in, soft and quiet, but the peace was short-lived as they faced a crowd of anxious faces. Townsfolk gathered, fidgeting and casting apprehensive glances at the brothers. Murmurs swayed through the air, threading uncertainty through the assembly. Listen up. Frank called, his voice slicing through the anxious whispers. We're all here because we believe in Maplewood. We believe in each other. He watched as their faces lit with recognition, a shared consciousness rising from the ashes of despair. Across the room, Jake stood, nodding in agreement. The brother he had known was slowly resurfacing, but just as hope began to settle, a figure stepped from the crowd announcing in a booming voice, the corporate representative who'd come to offer his services. The man's polished smile was sharp, like the suits that wrapped around his body. You don't want to resist change, folks. Think about jobs, prosperity. Each word dripped with promises couched in threats, designed to bind them all. I speak for Maplewood. Frank shouted over the din, heart racing. We're more than just numbers in a ledger. We're families, histories, and dreams. His fingers clenched at his side, the collection of past sacrifices fueling his determination. The crowd surged with energy, reflecting the fire he gifted them. Some faces turned resolute, but others still wavered, fear lingering in the corners of their eyes. Jake stepped forward alongside Frank, eyes locked on the creeping doubt before them, but even as they united the townsfolk, uncertainty clung to Frank's heart. Would the vibrations of this moment be enough? What if the darkness continued to encroach, or worse, if he lost Jake all over again in the process? As the townsfolk began to chant, igniting their spirits, one question hung in the air: what if their fight was only just beginning? The storm outside raged on, each crack of thunder mimicking the trepidation surging within Frank, readying him for the battles to come. Together, would they overcome the shadows that threatened to swallow Maplewood whole, or would they find themselves torn apart like the very fabric of their community? The atmosphere inside the old high school auditorium vibrated with an energy that was both electrifying and unnerving. As the chants of support faded, the reality of their situation came crashing down around Frank. The words from the corporate representative echoed in his mind, smooth, calculated. Yet the uncertainty swirling among the people of Maplewood felt tangible, like the coming storm outside. Frank stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. We need to know what we stand for. Let us make a list of what we love about this town. He glanced at Jake, who was leaning against a wall, arms crossed, deep in thought. One by one, voices from the crowd began to emerge. The community gardens. The annual harvest festival. Our neighbors who would do anything for one another. Each shout brought a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just faces in a crowd, they were the heartbeat of Maplewood, and Frank could see the resolve returning to their eyes. Across the room, a woman named Nora, known in town for her fierce spirit, stood up. We need to create a petition. Show the corporation how many of us refuse to sell our homes and our lives for a paycheck. Her voice rang out like a bell, cutting through the lingering doubt. Great idea! Jake exclaimed, pushing off from the wall and joining the conversation. If we can show our unity, leverage the numbers, maybe we'll have a chance. The room stirred with activity as people murmured in agreement. Frank felt a surge of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe together, they could withstand the storm. As they began drafting the petition, a sense of camaraderie flooded their hearts. Old tensions began to melt away, opening doors of forgiveness and understanding. Jake sat beside Frank, their shoulders brushing against each other. The simple act felt monumental. It meant they were moving forward, moving toward healing, but just as the ambient noise of hopeful chatter began to rise, a loud crash outside silenced them all. The crowd turned as one, eyes wide. Was that thunder? Someone whispered, glancing toward the darkening sky. No, it sounded like a vehicle. Frank replied, heart racing again. An unsettling dread crept into the atmosphere. They crept toward the windows, horror settling over them as they caught sight of a massive flatbed truck, emblazoned with the corporate logo, pulling into the parking lot. What are they doing here? Jake's voice was strained. The earlier excitement faded, replaced by a mounting fear. The rear door of the truck swung open, revealing men in hard hats and uniforms, machinery rolling out onto the asphalt. Demolition signs littered the ground like fallen dreams, stark and overwhelming. We need to confront them, Frank breathed, galvanizing the crowd. His words propelled them into action. They spilled outside, hearts pounding, faces taut with dread and defiance. Can't we talk? He shouted, stepping forward with Jake beside him. This is more than just a business deal. The lead worker turned, shock transforming into a smirk. Talk? We've got work to do. His words rolled off his tongue like a threat. Just then, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, illuminating both the symbols of their fight and what they stood to lose. Frank squared his shoulders, refusing to back down before the dark tide of corporate greed. The battle for Maplewood was beginning, but it felt like the storm was merely a prelude to something far more tempestuous. As they gathered as one, the question lingered in the air. Would their collective voices be strong enough to drown out the thunder, or was this just the beginning of their fight? The storm above rumbled like a restless beast, and Frank felt every vibration in his bones. He stood close to the front, unyielding, his eyes fixed on the workers who didn't seem to bat an eye at the growing crowd. They continued unloading machinery, oblivious, or perhaps intentionally blind, to the community that raised them. Jake moved to his side, anger simmering just below the surface. We can't let them do this. We have to stand our ground. Together, Frank replied, allowing a small smile of solidarity to break through. They couldn't go back now. This was their moment. The crowd began to grow restless, murmurs mixing with the wind and the sound of rain starting to patter on the school's roof. Frank turned to the group, heart racing. Everyone. We're more than just a collection of homes. We're a family. We need to show them that Maplewood is worth fighting for. A chorus of supportive shouts erupted, voices rising as the rain began to fall. Somewhere deep down, Frank felt the change, a shift from fear to courage, anxiety to resolve. They grasped the enormity of their fight, and it ignited a flame. With a deep breath, he stepped to the front, raising his arms to quiet the crowd. The raindrops danced on their heads while they waited, shifting anxiously. Let us march. Let us show them who we are. Show them we're not just stepping stones for their corporate games. Some people nodded, but others hesitated. Frank caught Nora's eye. She was known for her fierce spirit, her unwavering strength. She stepped forward, a leader in her own right. Frank's right. But let us do this smart. We need to make a clear statement. No shouting like children, we need to be organized. As she spoke, Frank could see her own resolve building. Something in her fierceness lit a fire in those around her. He watched as people began to break off into small groups, readying themselves. Some began to chant, while others articulated their thoughts into planned speeches. With heavy rain now falling, Frank felt the precious weight of community on his shoulders. The crew members looked up, mystified by the growing assembly. They were used to silence, or maybe just apathy, and this defiance shook them in ways they couldn't understand. Frank marched toward the group of workers, Jake beside him, pushing through the teeming mass of Maplewood's residents. Each step was full of purpose, their voices loud and unyielding like a chorus of thunder. "Stop this!" Frank shouted, his thunderous voice compelling. "You can't just come in and erase us. We won't let you take our lives. Our memories." The workers exchanged glances, some darting their eyes back toward the truck as if looking for permission to go on. The lead worker's smirk faltered, doubt crept into his expression, but then a voice crashed through the rain. "What about our kids? Our schools? We live here, not just survive." It was a passionate mother, her fierce spirit rising above the noise. Frank felt the energy shift, he sensed the moment was hanging on a thread, teetering. Would they push through? Would the wave of unity hold strong enough to wash away the encroaching dangers? Then, just as the atmosphere crackled with intensity, a horn blared from the truck, pulling everyone's attention. "What now?" Jake muttered, eyes narrowing at the corporate symbol glinting in the rain. Frank's heart raced. Was this the corporate team bringing backup? Would they bring in law enforcement? And in the eye of the storm, with the fate of Maplewood hanging by a thread, Frank took a step forward, ready to face whatever was coming. "This isn't over," he declared, his voice filled with raw determination. As tension spiraled, all they could do was stand their ground. What would they face? Would they weather the storm, or would their fight for Maplewood be drowned in a wave of corporate greed? The horn blared again, echoing like a siren of impending doom. But Frank didn't let fear take hold. He scanned the crowd, their faces glistening with rain and resolve. They were here for something deeper than just property, they were here for their dreams, their legacies, everything that Maplewood meant to them. "Don't back down," Frank shouted, his voice rising over the din. "This is our home. We have history here." He stepped closer to the workers, winding through the mass of residents who now surged forward, an intrepid tide of determination. The lead worker's face was pale, caught off guard by the swell of emotion. Frank could see it, the uncertainty creeping in, the recognition that this wasn't just a simple protest. Beside him, Jake gritted his teeth, fists clenching and unclenching. "They can't just bulldoze our lives," he barked. "Let us show them what we're made of." Frank felt the fire igniting in both of them. They bore the weight of their community, and he couldn't let them down. "Everyone, let us join hands. In unity, we are stronger." People reached for each other. It was a simple act, but it sent a shockwave of solidarity through the group. The chains forming between them felt like armor. They stood together, soaked from the rain, feet firmly planted in the mud that represented their roots. "Maplewood! Maplewood!" They chanted, the cadence steady and powerful. Each thundering beat felt like a heartbeat, reverberating in their chests. Frank looked around, eyes meeting Nora's once more. She was giving it everything she had. The way she led was magnetic. She was their voice, amplifying his thoughts into a roar. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. From the truck, a tall figure emerged, all slicked back hair and sharp suit, holding a clipboard like a talisman of authority. Frank's heart sank as he recognized him. It was Marcus, the corporate project manager who'd driven the plans. "Everyone, please." Marcus attempted to shout over the crowd, but it was futile. The momentum had shifted, their collective anger overpowering his words. "Enough. You can't keep pushing us around. You think we're just going to roll over?" Frank yelled, stepping toward Marcus, eyes blazing. We deserve to be heard. These kids deserve their playground. Our memories deserve a place. The crowd surged forward, growing more formidable. Frank could see sympathy flicker across Marcus's features, a mix of power and vulnerability. In that moment, he realized the corporate boss might just be unprepared for this level of dissent. Frank, take a step back. Jake warned, bringing a hand to his shoulder. Remember, we want to be heard, not create chaos. I know. But for too long they've walked all over us, Frank replied, breathless, rage and passion intertwining. He stepped back, but not without shooting a final glance at Marcus. What are you going to do? Jake said, and Frank could hear the worry creeping into his best friend's voice. Marcus adjusted his grip on the clipboard, letting silence tumble over the crowd for a moment. Look, I didn't come here to fight today. But if you stand in my way, I will have no choice but to call in the authorities. A heavy silence blanketed them. Rain continued to pour, a backdrop to this tense standoff. Frank's heart raced. Was this it? Would the very thing that united them splinter them apart? The crowd grew restless, uncertain hands squeezing tighter around one another. With everything hanging in the balance, it was now or never. Frank took a deep breath, trying to find a path through the uncertainty swirling around them. He could feel it simmering in the air, the possibility of change, but it required him to be brave, to make a decision. He could either retreat or surge forward. Are we going to let them walk all over us? He shouted, his voice breaking through the thick tension. Or will we show them the heart of Maplewood? The murmurs of the crowd shifted, eyes sparking with new fire. Frank could sense their hearts racing, the build-up before a storm. A woman stepped out from the back, her face determined. We fight for our future. For our children. Her words hung in the air, bold and electric. As the storm raged above, Frank could feel both fear and hope swirling within him. Which way would the winds blow? Would their courage stand against the storm that threatened to tear their lives apart? Together, they prepared to face whatever came next, but what truly awaited them just beyond the horizon. The crowd trembled like a living organism poised on the edge of action. Frank could feel their collective breath mingle with the rain as it fell harder, drumming against the chorus of voices rising in defiance. This was a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air thickened with tension, a palpable force pushing them closer to the brink. Maplewood. Maplewood. The chant morphed into an anthem, each repetition striking against the walls of apathy Marcus had built around himself. Frank noticed the sweat glistening on the man's brow, the slight twitch of his fingers. Was he starting to falter? Marcus! Frank called out, cutting through the chant. You can stop this. His voice wasn't just filled with anger but a strong plea buried beneath it. We're not against you. This isn't personal. Marcus hesitated, confusion flickering over his carefully maintained facade for just a second. Look, I have a job to do. I can't make exceptions for can't or won't. Frank challenged, taking a brave step forward. What's it like working for a company that bulldozes dreams? These aren't just buildings, this is who we are. You've been handed a decision that could change lives for the better. Can't you feel that? Marcus's eyes darted to the crowd, the faces they wore fear mingling with hope, but mostly the certainty that they would not back down. The clipboard lowered a fraction. You think I enjoy this? He blurted. I'm just following orders. I can't change the plan. A murmur rippled through the residence, a flicker of understanding glimmering. Even in a suit, even with a clipboard, Marcus was a person too. But before they could process this realization, Jake stepped in front of Frank, frustration bubbling over. Every single town in America sees people like you making decisions from your ivory tower. We just want to live. This isn't just a job for us. Jake's words played like a cathartic release. Frank felt the rage in their community coming to a head. He was one with them now, united not only by their shared space but by the raw emotion coursing through the air. "Then help us," a voice cried out from the crowd. "You're not just a project manager. You have the power to make a choice." Frank could see it, an invisible, fraying thread of humanity where Marcus stood. He watched as the man struggled with something internal, a battle in his eyes. "Remember the playgrounds? The first day we moved here?" Frank continued, keeping his voice steady. "You're part of Maplewood's story. Help us make it a happy one." For the first time, silence was an ally. The raindrops began to slow, their rhythm merging with the heartbeat of the community. All eyes turned to Marcus, as if willing him to find courage inside himself. "Listen," he finally said, his voice cracking slightly. "I don't know if I can convince the board to reconsider," but he met their stares, uncertainty painted on his face. "What if we talk? Maybe there's a way to keep something here. Something for you all?" Hope ignited in the air, a cracking energy rippling through the crowd. Frank could hear himself breathing, hope surging like a wave. But there was a catch he could sense, a hidden fear that lingered just beneath the surface of Marcus's plea. "What is going to happen when you go back?" Jake queried, skepticism lacing his words. "Will they listen to you? Or will they dismiss you like they always have?" Marcus's resolve appeared shaken for the first time, and it felt like they were standing at the edge of a precipice. Frank knew they needed to press forward, but could they trust this man who bore the weight of corporate decisions? The question loomed heavy and overwhelming. Would belief in their own strength be enough to tip the scale, or would they face another betrayal, another deaf ear turned towards their cries? A pause gripped the square, heavy with anticipation and fear. Frank's heart raced, and he could almost hear the collective sentiment of the crowd, hope tinged with doubt. This was their moment, but it felt fragile, like glass on the brink of shattering. Marcus started, then hesitated again, his gaze flickering over the murmuring crowd. The cries for change hung in the air, vibrating with a desperate energy that echoed Frank's own feelings. "You can do this, Marcus," Frank urged, taking another step closer. "You've seen how much this place means to us. You know the stories, the laughter, the bonds we've built. Don't you think they matter?" His words cut through the fear that wrapped around them tightly, threading their hearts together in a shared dream. Marcus dropped his clipboard to his side, the tension visibly leaving his body. "What if I were to tell them that I'm willing to try? That I'm ready to face the board?" A murmur of disbelief swept through the crowd, mouths agape in shock. Frank felt a swell of something warm wash over him. It was something old and familiar: trust. He could see the flicker of resolve igniting in Marcus's eyes, revealing glimpses of the man beneath the suit. "Just tell us you'll try." Jake's voice pierced through, urgent and raw. "Show them your heart, even if it's just for a moment." "I'll try," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "But I need your stories, your voices. I can't do this alone." His admission rang out, a call that drew everyone a little closer, reshaping the distance between them. Frank stepped forward, feeling the pulse of the crowd steady against his own. "We'll share everything, the memories, the dreams, what Maplewood has meant to every single one of us. You just need to commit to showing up for us." Eyes turned bright with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, murmurs flared again, now filled with something that felt like unity. Inspiration spread through the crowd, shaking off the remnants of despair. "Let us gather our stories," someone shouted, a spark igniting. "We'll write letters, create a presentation, make it impossible for them to ignore us." "Yes," another voice cried. "They need to see us as we are, our history." The crowd roared in affirmation, voices rising together in an overwhelming wave of determination. They flooded Marcus with their ideas, each suggestion a thread in the fabric of a newfound purpose. Frank could hardly contain his excitement as he looked at Marcus. "You're one of us now." But doubt still clung to the corners of his mind. As enthusiasm surged, Frank couldn't shake the lingering fear that this new path might just as easily lead them back to betrayal. Would they be able to change the minds that had never recognized their worth? As the rain lifted to a gentle mist, Marcus stood taller, swallowing hard as he accepted the heat of their collective gaze. Together, we can remind them why Maplewood matters. Just as the crowd began to solidify their plans, a distant rumble echoed a corporate vehicle approaching. A wave of tension washed over them as reality crashed back. They were not out of the woods yet. Frank! Someone shot out, fear creeping back among the hopeful faces. What if this is a trap? Frank's pulse quickened as he turned to face the vehicle, recognizing the looming threat of corporate power. Panic coursed through the crowd. What if this is just the beginning? Would Marcus truly lead them into the fight they had dreamed of, or would the board's arrival swing the doors shut on Maplewood's future once and for all? The sleek corporate vehicle ground its way closer, a symbol of the looming threat that had haunted Maplewood for so long. The crowd shifted uneasily, faces almost blending into the ashen clouds overhead. Frank's heartbeat echoed in his ears. "Everyone, listen!" Marcus shouted, cutting through the murmur of anxious voices. His eyes darted over the sea of faces, gathering strength from their palpable hope. "Remember why we're here. This is about more than just one meeting. This is a fight for our community." He took a deep breath, and in that moment, Frank saw him transform. There was something raw and real in Marcus' voice. It was the sound of defiance wrapped in the same heart that held the laughter and memories of Maplewood. The crowd's tension shifted slightly, the fear gave way, ever so slightly, to something different. Courage. The vehicle rolled to a halt, and the side door swung open. 3 figures stepped out, each dressed in tailored suits that shimmered with corporate intent. Their faces were expressionless, a stark contrast to the animated energy of the crowd. Frank clenched his fists, ready for any sign of attack. But Marcus pressed forward. "We don't want to fight you. We just want you to hear us. We have stories. We have a community worth saving." His words hung in the air, bold and unwavering. The lead figure, a woman with sharp features and pinched lips, raised an eyebrow. Frank couldn't see her eyes behind her sunglasses, but he could feel her critique slice through the air like a knife. "Stories are nice, but what matters here is the bottom line," she said coolly. "You can't run a business on nostalgia." The murmurs grew louder in the crowd. It was as if a fire had been lit beneath them. Frank felt the heat of it pooling in his chest. Nostalgia? It's not just that. It's our lives. Maplewood has been a place of growth, of family. Frank stepped forward. "This isn't just a property to us. It's our home." The tension in the air grew thick enough to taste. Frank scanned the crowd, expecting to see fear, but instead found faces set with resolve. More voices joined the fray, echoing Frank's sentiments, rising in passionate chorus. "We want to go quietly. Maplewood means everything." Marcus turned to the crowd, eyes alight with determination. "They think they can erase us, but we are not just memories. We are a movement." The audience roared back, a wave of energy that pushed against the encroaching corporate presence. But Frank's heart sank a little as he noticed the faces of his neighbors, people he had known all his life. Some were resolute, but others seemed uncertain, glancing at the corporate representatives as if seeking silent permission to back down. The woman spoke again, voice laced with disdain. "You think your stories will matter? We have plans for this land. We don't care about your nostalgia. We're here to build success. You're nothing more than a footnote." Footnote. The word hung heavily in the air, chilling. Frank's stomach twisted. What if they were right? What if all their efforts were meaningless against the weight of the corporate machine? Suddenly, at that moment, something changed within him. He saw the farmers in the crowd, the school teachers, the families who had paved the roads and tended the fields, their faces full of hope. He couldn't let that be shattered. Together, we are stronger, he announced, voice steady with resolve. We'll show them who we are. But would it be enough? The pounding of the corporate heart seemed to drown out their own. As the meeting unfurled, with voices clashing and tempers flaring, Frank couldn't shake the question lingering in his mind. Would they stand united against the storm, or would Maplewood become another forgotten tale in the corporate saga? The answer lay just ahead, but the stakes felt impossibly high. As the confrontation with the corporate giants began to unfold, Frank steeled himself for what lay ahead. What would happen when the truths of their stories collided with the cold indifference of corporate ambition? Would Maplewood fade away, or would they remind the world that they still had a voice? The air crackled with tension as Marcus and Frank faced the corporate trio, who surveyed the crowd like hawks circling their prey. The murmurs from the townspeople grew louder, each voice a thread in the fabric of their shared legacy. Frank felt the pulse of their resolve. It was comforting, yet precarious. People of Maplewood. Marcus shouted again, his voice rising above the din. This isn't just a meeting, it's our moment. We're not here begging for scraps, we're demanding respect. Frank could see the fire in Marcus's eyes, and it flickered within him as well. He stepped closer to him, feeling the swell of energy in the crowd. They were tired of being dismissed. They were tired of feeling small, the lead corporate woman scoffed. Respect? You're asking for respect while clinging to outdated sentiments. This place is a dying ember, it needs to be ignited with ambition, with growth. A low rumble of discontent passed through the crowd. Frank fought to suppress a surge of anger growth. At what cost? He glanced at his neighbors, searching for any sign of wavering. But beside him, Clara, a schoolteacher with years of devotion to her students, took a step forward. You talk of ambition, she called out, but what about the dreams we've built here? Will you use our memories as stepping stones for your profits? Frank could feel the swell in the crowd again, each voice combining into a powerful crescendo. This is our home. We can't let you erase it. The corporate representatives shifted uncomfortably, their polished exteriors wavering against the heat of the community's passion. The tension morphed into something almost tangible, a force that could ripple through their corporate armor. Frank marveled at how quickly they had turned from a disheartened bunch into a force of nature. And then, like a spark igniting dry grass, someone in the back shouted, "Maplewood will not be forgotten." The words echoed, igniting responses from others, each voice a testament to their shared determination. Frank felt a wave of something new faith. Amid the shouting, Frank's gaze caught that of an elderly man, Tom, who had spent decades fixing the roads and planting trees that had grown tall and strong. Despite his frail appearance, Tom raised a fist. This land has spoken to us. It has given us life, it has watched our children grow. We won't let you take that away. At that moment, Frank realized the power of community wasn't just about rivalry, it was about cherishing history, about preserving what they had built together. This wasn't just a battle for land, it was an assertion of their identity. The woman with the sunglasses shifted uncomfortably, her facade starting to crack. Frank felt a deep desire to press on, to take their stand even farther. If you care about success, Frank interjected, you need to understand that true success comes from investing in people. We are the ones who know this land, love it. But doubt lingered in the air like a chilling fog. What if their words fell on deaf ears? What if the corporate giants overwhelmed them with cold, hard numbers? The woman finally removed her sunglasses, revealing piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate each person in the crowd, weighing their value. You make compelling arguments, she replied slowly. But you must understand this money talks louder than words. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It was as if the corporate trio had pulled back a veil, revealing their intentions in stark, cold light. Frank sensed panic rise in the crowd again, but this time, he refused to let it prevail. He stepped forward once more, his voice a raw whisper that rang with heartfelt passion. Then let us make our words worth listening to, he challenged, let us show them the depths of our commitment. What happens next will be a testament to our resolve. With that, the crowd began to chant again, powered by an urgency that felt almost electric. We are Maplewood. We will not be erased. Frank's heart raced, a blend of fear and fierce hope coursing through his veins. With each chant, with each raised fist, they forged an unbreakable bond, standing together against what threatened to tear them apart. Their next steps would be crucial. Would they be able to change the course of their fate? As the tension escalated and the stakes seemed to reach a breaking point, a figure emerged from the shadows, someone no one expected to see. What would they reveal, and could it change everything? The storm overhead raged, but inside the burgeoning chaos of Maplewood, a different kind of storm brewed, one of hope, determination, and voices longing for recognition. As the surprising figure stepped forward, an elderly woman with wild silver hair and bright, perceptive eyes caught everyone's attention. It was Marlene, a longtime resident and key figure in Maplewood's history. She had always been the backbone of the community, guiding young families and helping neighbors in need. Stop! Marlene's voice rang out like a bell, commanding and steady. All eyes turned towards her, curiosity mixed with fear. She had a way of drawing people in, her very presence infused with warmth and strength. These people might not understand what they are about to bulldoze, she began, her voice firm yet soothing. They are not just taking property, they are robbing us of our stories, our memories, our lives. You underestimate what Maplewood stands for. The corporate representatives exchanged glances, their icy demeanor faltering under the weight of Marlene's words. Frank sensed this shift. He stepped forward, heart racing, spurred on by Marlene's presence. What she says is true. We're not just fighting to keep buildings. We're fighting to protect our history, our families, and the dreams still alive in this town. We've stood together through struggles, laughter, and love. This is our heritage, and we will not let it crumble. With each passing moment, the crowd swell in presence and passion. We will not be erased. The townsfolk cried once more, their voices rising in a powerful harmony, like a tide crashing against the shore. Marcus looked toward the corporate team, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Are you really willing to risk losing that? He asked, hesitating slightly. The lead woman narrowed her eyes but faltered under the weight of the community united. As the chant subsided to murmurs, Marlene turned her attention to her neighbors, reading their faces and drawing strength from those years of companionship. Remember when the park was built? She gestured with her hands, illustrating the memories that hung like banners among them. The joy in our children's south laughter, how the gardens grew from seeds planted by all our hands. Eyes turned to one another, memories igniting emotions that shaped their love for Maplewood. Frank felt the unity swell stronger, an unbreakable bond. Let us show them what we believe in. He urged, feeling the charge in the air. We need to share our stories. Each of us holds a piece of Maplewood's heart. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by voices stepping forward one by one. An artist who had painted murals across town, a mother who created the community garden, a volunteer firefighter who put out the flames threatening not just homes but lives. Each voice was like a brushstroke, adding color to the tapestry that made up their shared history. The corporate team appeared lost, their plans crumbling as they bore witness to the strength of true community. Marlene's powerful delivery swept through the crowd, capturing the essence of what they had endured and built together, the tales of love, resilience, and a shared commitment to one another. As their voices echoed in the damp air, Frank caught a glimmer of acknowledgement in Marcus's eyes. This is about more than just business, he began to realize aloud. You people carry the spirit of the land with you. How can we move forward without acknowledging that? Marlene's expression softened, and for the first time, she smiled. We are not a dying ember, we are a forest waiting to be nurtured. We ask you not to erase our legacy but to come together. Let us create something that honors our past while building a future, the future we all desire. In that moment, a collective breath held for so long was finally released. The clouds began to part, rays of sunlight breaking through, casting a glow over Maplewood as if the sun acknowledged their struggle. The corporate woman nodded slowly, folding her arms as the atmosphere shifted. Okay. Let us have that conversation. We can discuss options that honor the sentiment of this community. Frank felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they could find common ground. He stepped closer to Marcus as he spoke. Let us work together. We can build something that serves both our needs. Together, we can rise stronger. The sound of applause filled the air as Maplewood's strength echoed in unison, turning their battle cries into a resolute promise to one another. Frank looked at Jake, who had been silently observing, eyes shimmering with pride. We did this, he whispered, together. In that moment, the weight of all past grievances seemed to shift, replaced by an unbreakable bond. As they began to weave the stories of Maplewood into their conversation with the corporate representatives, each participant imbued the outcome with hope and healing. The storm clouds softened above, symbolizing renewal, possibilities, and a brighter future. Because in Maplewood, together, they were more than just a community, they were a family united in purpose, ready to face whatever came their way. With hearts alight and spirits renewed, Maplewood stood strong, fighting not just for their homes but for everything that made them who they were. Together, they had to prove that their dreams mattered. This was just the beginning. Now, while the echoes of hope still resonated, it's time for you to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support us in spreading these inspiring journeys. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Your thoughts mean the world to us. And finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand how important it is to back the channel through these actions.